recording. But we were anticipating a launch at the end of October. What ended up happening was, as I alluded to it earlier, we are still waiting on approval from the App Store. It's just kind of one of those things. We are a smaller startup and didn't really anticipate this much pushback from the App Store, but they are making quite a few changes, so it could be coming from there too. But we're still iterating, hoping to get feedback. If anyone's open to doing a feedback session of the platform, would love. We have a few folks on this call who've already done a few of those. So thanks to everyone. A little bit about me over here at Mentra. I focus on delivery. So what that means is I have the pleasure of coming on here and getting to talk with you all about ways that we can help level up your career, hopefully find you that job that you're looking for. And then on the other side, I help support what we call our clients, but in this case are really just organizations that want to hire neurodivergent folks and are willing to invest in doing that. So me personally, I'm a dyslexic ADHDer and I love pattern recognition. I think it's throughout my career just been so much fun to lean into ways that I can use that as a skill from my neurodivergence into the career that I'm working and all of this other stuff. I'm sure if you've been attending these, you've seen these slides, but I like to create. So that's in part what we're doing here together, creating hopefully a change in the job market for all of us neurodivergent folks. Now, because we are all neurodivergent on this call, this gives a really, really good, when are we getting into it? In a second, Ian. Yeah, just be patient with me. We're getting into the upfront content and then we'll get into it. But because we are all neurodivergent people in this chat, I want to take advantage of that. Drop in the chat what your special interest, hyperfixation is. You can drop in, we talked about LinkedIn, what you're looking for in terms of roles from a logistic perspective, but love the opportunity to drop that in. So we've done a few of these sessions. If you've enjoyed the experience, you have any feedback, you have not enjoyed the experience, send me along an email. I've dropped it in here and I'll drop it in the chat later. In terms of events, we have a few upcoming events. So we are hosting weekly office hours every Wednesday at 4:30. That's an opportunity for you to come in, ask questions that we aren't able to get to in our time together here. Then next Monday, we are bringing on Casey Jordan, who is a neurodivergent coach and entrepreneur. Super excited to be bringing on her expertise. She has helped thousands of ADHDers make a difference in their lives and grow their careers alongside it. Of course, open to what you want to hear from next. So my email is right there. Feel free to reach out to me. Joe is one person on this call who has given me feedback on events that he wants to see and has directly shaped the events that we're putting out. So we listen to your feedback and integrate it to the best of our abilities. Currently working with Honeywell, Amazon, and Microsoft. So if anyone comes across roles at any of those three organizations, we have connections directly to recruiters and we can ensure that your resume is seen by a live recruiter. So if you come across anything, you have my email, send it my way. All right, so I want to get into a few reminders from our past workshops and talk about what a resume can be, because it doesn't have to be the traditional resume that we're going to talk about in a second. It can be a few different things. It can be a social media page. So coming down to a passion, if you clicked into my LinkedIn, you'll notice that I love birds. Make your passions your personality. Like that is an okay thing to do in adulthood, especially amongst neurodivergent folks. Another great thing, if you have a portfolio but don't have a website, typically a portfolio is a website. But if you don't have that, there are other great free options such as Linktree. You can have a website portfolio if you have the skills to build that out. You can have a conversation. So we're talking about networking. I think it's for every 3 jobs landed, for every 4 jobs landed, 3 of the 4 are given via networking. And that's why networking can be so important, but networking often doesn't, when I talk to neurodivergent folks, they're like, it doesn't work for me. I don't like it. And I understand why, because oftentimes it's not, but it's about finding spaces that do embrace your mind at the level that you're at. And some of those are here. So Inventive, you can use a Zoom background. I have a link for that for anyone who's interested. I'm just going to come back into the chat. Cybersecurity interest, ADHD with attention to detail. Joe said large interest. I'm a diehard San Jose Sharks fan. Ooh, that's awesome. Hoping to find work in software quality assurance. Okay. That's helpful. Thanks everyone for using some of that chat. All right. So we grounded ourselves in what a resume can be outside of what it traditionally is. Now we're going to get into what a traditional resume is and the question we actually need to be asking ourselves. So oftentimes we are asking ourselves the question of, how can I convey all of my career? When really it should be, how can I convey snippets so that the other person can understand who I am? Just like little bits of who you are integrated into your resume. And we can talk about what that looks like here. So contact information, skills, education, languages, proficiencies, passions can sometimes be good to add onto your resume, depending on your experience within those. Highlights, work experience, these are all traits that fall into a resume. So what we want to do is actually reduce your resume from where it is today. Say it's 2 pages. Does anyone here? Well, yes, thank you for asking, Stephanie. These slides will be available. I can send them shortly after this meeting, and then the actual video will be available likely in the next week. So I can start sending them out a little bit differently than we have in the past because we were sending them out together. But thanks for asking. Good question. So our goal is to reduce your resume to 1 page. Now, one area that you're really going to want to pay attention to, and I've seen this time and time again, I've reviewed thousands of resumes at this point, is that folks leave in so much content, and for good reason, in their education or in the section of their education. But unfortunately, what recruiters are looking for more often than not is a checkbox, and just to make sure that you went to school. Now that varies. If you are entry level, there may be more incentive to include something like your grade point average, but outside of that content, your education system should be limited to just those 3 pillars. And if you're entry level, the 4 pillars. And really the grade point average only if it benefits you to include that. At the end of the day, recruiters aren't looking for your ability to be tested, unfortunately. And so oftentimes they will overlook that section, or if your resume is too long and that section is bulky, the resume in its entirety can actually get skipped over. And I'm not saying that these are right practices, but they exist. Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so Stephanie said, do we need the graduation year? I worry about ageism. You don't need the graduation year. No, and you can absolutely exclude it. As I said, like it's just a checkbox for recruiters. So you can omit the graduation year and just include like bachelor's in or like bachelor's, comma, political science, something along those lines. But I think that's a good call out to make as it relates to ageism. Good call out. Thanks, Stephanie. And then Joe said, if I graduated a while back, do I still need to include the date I graduated? Or will that possibly show my age and contribute to the ongoing? Oh, these are really great questions, Joe. You said something very similar to Stephanie. I would just say, if you're worried about ageism, omit it. And if you omit it, that just means that that section is going to be even smaller. You really just need the name of your school and your major. And then Cassio said, how can I sell me as a data engineer with an musicological background? Whoa, that's a really, I feel like I would have to know more. Maybe we could chat during the body doubling session, because I definitely think that there are ways to pitch yourself. We did a workshop back it might have been a few weeks ago where it was the second part to this workshop, but we talked about how to talk about your passions and the skills that you learned through your passions. I'm not sure if ethnomusicological is your passion or was your career, but there are ways that you can pull on similar experiences to talk about what they might be looking for in a data engineer. So let's chat more about that on the side, Cassio. Good question. James says, are we writing resumes for AI or actual people? That is part of the problem, right? That is actively part of the problem. And I love that we have folks that are agreeing to that, because absolutely it's unfortunate, and a lot of employers now are using AI to sift through resumes. That being said, of our clients, they are not leveraging AI to look through resumes. So all of this expertise that I'm speaking to is expertise that came directly from from my client or from the client relationships that aren't leveraging AI. So the AI portion is more for like external roles that you might be applying for that we might not be able to guarantee whether or not like an actual human is looking at the resume. But I will say, like, unfortunately, in order for us to really make sure that your resume is getting seen, like, there may be instances where we have to cater to AI. And I hope over time that organizations see more the benefit in their own in staff folks for reviewing. But where we are today is we have to play the game a little bit. And so that's hopefully what we're trying to offer here in a neurodivergent friendly way. And then Corey said, I focus on making it readable by a human because eventually one is going to see it. Yeah, okay, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. There are ways where people are like cheating AI. I don't have any of those recommendations in here. Some people, I mean, I could tell you a few, but like I think focusing on what you can control versus like whether or not AI will be sifting through can be more helpful. So I think that's a really good point, Corey. And thanks everyone for the chat. Next, in terms of content areas that we can cut down to, and I've seen this a few different times. So oftentimes I will see that folks have two different sections for their skills. So they'll have up at the top their brief overview, your overview. I'll get into that in a few seconds, but they'll have their overview. And then oftentimes they will have their like, I think it's attributes is what I've seen it referred to, attributes. And then at the bottom of the resume, they have skills. Attributes and skills are the exact same things. So we should be condensing those down into one. And I actually recommend, because if you're using an overview at the top of your resume, I recommend putting the skills down at the bottom. If you are looking though for a data engineer, software engineer role, anything along those lines, I actually recommend like cybersecurity. I recommend putting it below the overview so that when they first open up your resume, their eyes go directly to your skills section. And that's something you're going to want to test as you're refining your resume. I recommend giving someone your resume if you can, like even in virtual format, and asking them, where did your eyes go first? What did you look at first? And that will tell you a lot about where the recruiter might be looking too. And if, for example, like I was speaking to someone a few weeks ago about their resume and the top section had their name in very large font and like font size. And ultimately, like it is very important for the recruiter to know your name. But it's more important that they actually read the content of your resume, read the middle part, that their eye is drawn to that middle section of your resume versus that top. Because unfortunately, when we are working with humans, the stat is every recruiter has about 4 seconds to look at your resume. I know that can be debilitating. I know that's an ugly fact, and that's not fun probably to hear. That being said, it is what the realm that we're working in. So those first 4 seconds that you have and where their eye line is drawn to is going to be really, really important. And that's something we can do during body doubling together too. So I encourage everyone, and as you've seen throughout these events, to drop in your resume in the chat. And we can use some of that like body doubling time to give each other feedback on our resume, tell each other where our eyes were drawn to, whether or not the skills need to be condensed, kind of create a system where we can kind of support each other in making these changes. Because I will tell you, like as someone who I graduated top of my class. When I was told that I had to remove like my grade point average and the fact that I was on the dean's list from my resume, it was a gut punch. I didn't want to do it, but it ultimately led to me getting a job in corporate. And at the time, it was a job that I wanted. So I will say, like, making those minor changes can really be influential. Another thing off of that too is relationships with recruiters. I will tell you one instance of a recruiter that I had a conversation with, and I went for a role in the same corporate job that I just mentioned, and she told me that they were moving forward with other candidates. I was obviously super bummed. This was like I was like fresh out of school, and I stayed in contact with her. I sent her a text message because I had her phone number. I sent her a text message every other month, I would say, just asking her, like, hey, did you come across any roles? Just making sure that I was on top of mind for her. You can do that with email too. And over time, and eventually, a role popped up and it ended up aligning perfectly. The team was great and I was brought on. So those relationships can also be really, really impactful if you're able to hold on to them. I know we were talking about some recruiters a little bit earlier, but at the end of the day, if you can make their job easier by holding on to their email, perfect. James says when you go to the website of the company and check to see if they say how they want your resume to be formatted. Disney actually has that on their site, surprisingly. Oh, that is really interesting. So Disney has their own format for a resume, and I'm sure it's just a template that you drop in, but that's really cool that they offer that. All right. Well, thank you, James. Another area that we're going to want to pay attention to is your experience for every role that you have listed, especially if you have you shouldn't have more than 3 roles on your resume, just to like ground us. There shouldn't be any more than 3 roles on your resume. But within that, if you have less than 3, it's okay to exceed this like 4 bullet point, like kind of guideline that we're laying out here. But if you have more than 3 roles, you're going to want to keep to even less than 4 bullet points, maybe 3. And those should be hard hitting bullet points, like the ones that we talked about. I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago. We talked about how to match specific values within that organization or within your own or skills. Sorry, how to match the skills to specific bullet points throughout your resume. If there is a bullet point that does not link back to a skill that you have listed on your resume, remove it. If it's a bullet point you want to keep and still use, then I recommend linking it back to a skill. So add that to your section so that the overarching theme is there. And then they can go more in depth through your experience. So think about skills as buzzwords and experience as the details. Now, the last section that I want to share with you all, and honestly, this section I don't even recommend having because 9 times out of 10 recruiters, unfortunately, are not going to read it. What they're going to do is skim your experience and give you a call. That's usually how recruiters are inclined to get more information from a candidate. Stephanie asked, what if I've mostly done contract roles? Ooh, this is a really, really good question. And it brings up a really good point, which is having your own like brand that all of these contract work can fall under. So for example, I have an LLC on the side. It is called That Quirky Bird Girl. And for all of the contract work that I do across every single startup, I will put like 1 bullet point for each contract work. So for example, like it falls under like founder, whatever it might be. Because at the end of the day, if you are a contract worker, you are a founder. You are writing your own rules as it relates to the business that you're helping support. You're crafting oftentimes and working around one large project. So I would say put it all under your own sort of brand. And then you can list yourself as the founder within your sort of contract work. And then you can highlight the specific like organizations that you are working for. So for example, like if you did work at Meta, you could write like Meta in italics and then a semicolon, and then you write built X systems to optimize Y by 10%, something along those lines. But I think putting them all under the same one would be a really great start. What do you think, Stephanie? Is that something that would work for you? Is that something does that consolidate all of your contract roles? Yeah.
Is it okay to talk on your? I know we're just typing. Yeah, so I've done contract roles, but I was employed by, a recruiting agency. So that's why, when they ask, I guess there's like more flexibility on the actual resume, but a lot of these job applications like also use websites or whatever you want to call them, where you have to enter all your information over again, even though you already sent them your resume. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out like how do we match that up, because usually when they ask, they'll have a specific required box for employer, and then the brand you worked for, and then so yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Do you feel like would it feel accurate to you to put it under like one overarching like, or do you think that there's more value in like breaking it out?
I'm not really sure. I guess for me, I'm more worried about what's allowed, or because I don't want to like misrepresent, and because I don't have sort of my own business. So, I guess I'm just trying to figure out like, well, what's okay and what's not okay to be listed like as the employer.
Yeah. Okay. I would say, do you guys know what it takes to become a business owner by chance? It's registering. Oh yeah, go ahead, Stephanie. Yeah, feel free to chime in whenever. But you can request an EIN. An EIN is completely free. You don't have to register an LLC. You can eventually use it, but that allows you to establish a business profile. So then from that business profile, you can list all of those contract roles. But again, like it kind of depends, especially if, oh, John, it looks like you raised your hand. Was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I was not working for an agency, but rather working for two firms that were being contracted out to do work for the government. So I kind of did something similar where I wrote the title of the company of the agency I was working for, but emphasized that it was a contractor role. The reason being was in my circumstance, I was actually working for two different firms, and then I was laid off 3 months into the second company. And I actually went to an interview that was like 5 hours long, and they had a panel, and I was presenting, and they actually asked me, the same person twice, both in the interview over the phone and in person. So I see that you have this one role and you were only there for 3 months. What happened? And I explained that it was the same role twice. And I don't know if it really is something similar to what you've experienced, but in my situation, I did it based off of where I worked and then just add like in a parentheses sort of these were the companies I worked for over this period of time. It was the same role. So it's not the same situation, but I hope it sort of helps you it kind of relates to what Steph was talking about earlier.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that context, and it definitely helps adding in like more options that you could do. So you could have it like broken out by the different firms that you worked with. And I'm curious too, like you could also reach out to them, and are you still working with those firms? Oh, sorry, I should have directed that. That was for you, Stephanie.
Well, I'm trying to, yeah. Yeah, I mean, off and on. I mean, I'm contacting them, but I'm not currently working for any of them. So,
Okay. It might be interesting to even ask them if you can put them under, or if you are technically contracted with the, you said it was a recruiting agency?
yeah, so I'm not currently contracted with, basically a recruiter, would contact me. Sorry, my daughter's fussing in the background. Contact me, say, hey, I have a job, and I submit my application, interview with them, and then they place me at a company. But I'm not still employed by that recruiting agency. Once the contract ends, that's kind of the end of like our official relationship, if that makes sense. But I'm still like on their lists. So if they find something a couple of years down the road, they'll contact me again, that kind of thing. So does that make sense what I'm saying?
Okay. Well, it sounds like they are contracting with you directly, even though they're going through a firm. So that might give you leeway to put it under an EIN if you are interested in that, just for consolidation purposes, but you could also list them out individually. I just wouldn't recommend having 4 bullet points for each one. Thanks so much for your question, Stephanie, and thanks, John. Appreciate you guys. All right. We've got another question from Randy. They said, what if you've done freelance or project-based work over a period of time? Okay, this is kind of what we're speaking to as well. Anytime we're doing freelance, I recommend putting it under an EIN because then you can speak directly and it speak directly to those skills through your organization, even if it's not fully built out as like an LLC or something larger. It also offers more legitimacy. People now more than ever are looking to hire founders and freelancers and contract workers. We all have those skills to go out and do that, like marketing, do that sales, do that customer satisfaction, like all of those different funnels have so much value to offer when you start positioning yourself as a business owner, because at the end of the day you are. And then Jenny had a question. Feel free to, yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
It was two comments. One is in some states, I know in California, I was advised by some small business administration centers that you don't necessarily need a separate EIN if you're just doing a sole proprietorship. But I agree with you, if you are doing, freelancing with other associates and forming a group, you probably want an LLC or something as a separate entity. But that, so therefore, if it's just you can use your social security, but I don't know how it differs by state. So I consult your tax advisor. The other question was for people who have 10 to 15 years of experience, some recruiters have said max you can do 2 pages, but obviously keep the most important and relevant stuff on the first page. So I'm just curious about your advice on that.
I think that's a great call out. And yeah, I tend to agree. I think once you get into more of like the leadership based roles, or roles that do require that like 10 to 15 experience that you had, oftentimes those roles aren't coming through the traditional ways that we are applying and are more like early career. Those roles typically come in the way of referrals. And so like you'll have an individual like peeling through it, and sort of it's just like a different set of barriers, I would say, that they reach at that level. Jenny, would you say that is accurate for the folks that you've maybe seen in those roles?
So I generally don't use the spray and pray ATS scans because I don't have the bandwidth to apply to so many resumes like a machine. So it is a targeted approach through connections that I have at target companies, and therefore they're more lenient on a resume that's 2 pages or doesn't follow a traditional format, but best highlights what's most relevant and readable for them.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, that's a really great context. And that's a really great, we've done a few like networking workshops. Networking can be so key, especially when it's networking that works for your brain. So hopefully those environments have been fulfilling for you. But thanks, Jenny. Cassio said, nice presentation. I used to work with information mapping, and this is really gold. Thanks, Cassio. John says, is there a resource anywhere that vets and lists recruiters that are legit? Scam artists and grifters abound out here. Wow. Okay. That is a really, really, really good question. And I have to say, I personally, unless anyone else in the chat has come across anything, I personally have not come across anything. But yes, James does have a really good point. We are building out a system to vet specifically the recruiters that we work with, but also all the recruiters that you engage with or will engage with in the Mentra platform have been vetted. So there won't be any chance to encounter any sort of like scam artists and grifters that you might experience on other platforms. But that's a really good question. There should be a tool, a singular tool that calls that out. And then Corey said, I've done contract work, but it's through agencies, and every agency has been different. Okay. Okay. James said one way is to clearly state the company name and your job title, followed by a duration indicating the contact period. Yep. That's really great advice. James asked, could you add the explanation that it was contracting work under the same summary as well? You can, absolutely. You can add like on the date, you can add like contract through and then include the date that you were there. Oftentimes it's a really great opportunity to talk about when you can get more information out. Okay. Some states don't require, yeah, that's really good. Sorry, under an EIN. Yes, employer identification number. Freelance. This is all really great questions, everyone. If you're curious more on what it looks like, I can send along an article after our time together today. But that is our overview. I would love it if y'all would feel comfortable dropping in your resume. Most of the folks that we have here on this call are entry level or mid-career. And so it gives us a really good opportunity to kind of tailor our resume. And then as Jenny said, as your career grows, as you get into those like 10 to 15 years, you can start expanding your resume out. But at the start of your career, we want to keep it short, brief, and sweet. Okay, so if you could drop in your resume, everyone, that would be great. We're going to get started with another body doubling session. And so while we're doing this body doubling together, we'll just be giving comments in the chat for those that drop in their resume. If you're not familiar with what body doubling is oftentimes associated within neurodivergent communities, but essentially what it is it's an opportunity for us to complete tasks together while we know that other folks are doing tasks as well. So it helps our brain get things done. Oh, John says, I have 35 years of work history. Am I just cooked? No, you are not. John, send your resume in the chat. I would love to look at the 35 years of work. You can always make a pivot in your career, even if it doesn't feel like it. It's just a matter of time and getting the resources to do that. If that's something that you want to do, then we can talk about that too. And then Joe, thanks for sending along your resume. So what we'll do is for those that would like, you're welcome to go camera off and we will get into some, thanks Veronica, thanks Ganesh. We'll get into some resume review. If you're updating your resume, drop it in the chat once it's done, but we'll separate for the next 12 minutes and then I'll come back. We'll drop in sort of what we were able to complete in the chat and then we'll come back together. All right, everyone, let's do some body doubling. And everyone, I got one more resume to review. Thank you so much to everyone who sent it through on the chat. And Ben, it looks like your resume may have been sent in Word. Is there any chance you might be able to send that in PDF format? And that's actually a really good note, everyone. Sorry to break up our body doubling for a quick second, but just want to make sure that anytime that you are sending out your resume, as long as it's someone who's not going to be like editing content, you're going to always want to send it out in a PDF. In the format that you are going to want to use to send out that resume, you're going to want to use the name of the title typically that you're applying to if you've updated the resume, but do your first name, last name, resume, and then the name of the role. That is what the recruiter will use to look you up in their own like downloads, and you want that to be as easy for them as possible to find you. So this is awesome. Just going through chat. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, just want to make sure everyone was heard. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, for those of you that I didn't get to read your resume, which I think I got through all of them, I just needed to look through. I don't necessarily know that that's the case, Joe, as it relates to Word, but I will follow up with you all as to whether or not that is. From my understanding, and internally, recruiters have always had trouble with like word based, but let me just make sure and ask some recruiter friends just to make sure. ATS, and we'll follow up. Thanks, Joe. All right, my resume. Um, Cool. And thanks, John, for taking a look at other folks' resumes. This is awesome. All right, everyone, we are at the end of the hour, and I dropped my email in chat. So if we missed anyone, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to do it one more time because I know there was some back and forth. You all have my LinkedIn as well. And if anything comes up, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. We're happy to be a resource to you all here and continue hosting these events. Like I said, next Monday, we have Casey Jordan coming on, who is an awesome ADHD coach, and she's going to give us some of her favorite tips and tricks that she shares with clients that helped them make a difference in their career and in their goals. So if anyone has any questions, if anyone wants a specific event or us to speak to someone in particular, we've been looking at other folks to bring on and are open really to any suggestions that you all have. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this session. It's been really fun with you all. Yeah, Veronica, hope you guys have an awesome evening. It's Monday, so you're going to have a great start to your week. You've launched with this workshop and insights that are going to help you really drive into the rest of your week. So just keep going. You guys are all so amazing. You're going to crush it. I just know it. So keep me posted on all the amazing things that you do. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week. Bye, everyone.